What you did last night was disrespectful. If you want to live the single life, we will get a divorce.
I am sorry. It was a mistake.
Husband catches wife cheating after 10 years of marriage. She tried to pitch reconciliation. I have been married to my wife for just over 10 years now, but honestly, it feels like a lifetime. We met back in high school when we were both 17, started dating senior year, and somehow managed to keep it going through college, even though we went to different schools. Looking back, I probably should have paid more attention to the rumors about her in high school. People used to whisper that she was promiscuous, sleeping around with different guys, but I never saw any of that behavior myself. She was always where she said she would be, always answered my calls and texts right away. She never gave me any reason to doubt her, so I figured the rumors were just jealous people talking nonsense. After she graduated with her degree in business management, I proposed. Figured we had been together long enough, and I was ready to settle down. The wedding was small, nothing fancy, just family and close friends. My dad had been running his HVAC business for 20 years, and I started working for him right after we got married. I've been doing installations and repairs ever since, earning a decent income and enjoying steady work. My wife landed a job as a sales manager at this furniture store chain that has maybe 4 or 5 locations throughout the state. Not one of those big national chains, but they do well enough. She seemed to really enjoy the work, meeting customers, managing the sales floor, and dealing with vendors. For the first few years, everything was pretty normal. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but nothing major. She would come home at reasonable times. We would have dinner together, watch TV, and go to bed. Weekends, we would hang out with friends or work on projects around the house. Then, about 2 years ago, things started to change. She began spending way more time with her female friends from work. Plans that we had already made would suddenly get canceled because someone from the store wanted to go out for drinks, or she would make plans with them without even asking me first. At first, I tried to be understanding because I figured she needed some girl time and social interaction outside of our marriage. However, it started happening more frequently. She would come home later and later, sometimes not until well after midnight. When I would ask her about it, she would get defensive and say I was being controlling, that I should be happy she had friends and a social life instead of complaining about it. The breaking point came when we had plans to go to my brother's birthday dinner. We had confirmed with him earlier that week that we would be there. About 2 hours before we were supposed to leave, she told me she was going out with her work friends instead. Just like that, no discussion, no apology for canceling on my family. I completely lost my temper and told her this was becoming a pattern, and I was sick of it. She started yelling back, saying I was trying to control who she could be friends with. The fight escalated quickly, and she ended up storming out of the house. Did not come back that night. Did not answer my calls or texts. I spent the whole night wondering where the hell she was and if our marriage was falling apart. When she finally walked through the front door the next afternoon, she acted like nothing had happened. She went about her business, checking her phone, completely ignoring me. I tried to talk to her for about 6 hours, but she would not engage at all. Finally, around dinner time, she apologized, but it felt forced and insincere, like she was saying what she thought I wanted to hear so we could move past it. I told her that disappearing overnight without any communication was completely unacceptable. If she wanted to live like a single person, maybe we should just get divorced. The threat of divorce seemed to shake her up. She started begging and apologizing, promising it would never happen again, swore that she loved me and wanted to make our marriage work. I was still angry, but I decided to give her another chance. Things got better for about 6 months after that whole mess. She stopped going out as much with her work friends, started coming home at normal times again. We fell back into our old routine of having dinner together and spending weekends doing stuff around the house. I thought maybe that big fight had been a wake-up call for her. She realized how close she had come to losing our marriage and decided to prioritize us instead of her social life. One thing I always appreciated about my wife was that she never put a passcode on her phone. We had both always been pretty open about that stuff, never felt like we needed to hide anything from each other. Her phone would sit on the kitchen counter or the coffee table, and either of us could pick it up if we needed to check something. However, I then started noticing subtle changes in her behavior again. She was not responding to my texts as quickly as she used to. Before, if I sent her a message during the workday, I would get a response within minutes. Now, it might take hours. And when I asked her about it, she would say she was busy with customers or in meetings. Her explanations always made sense, but something felt off. She was also staying later at the furniture store more frequently. She claimed they were doing inventory or rearranging displays or training new employees. Again, all perfectly reasonable explanations for why she might be working late. But it was happening more often than it used to. I tried not to be paranoid about it because I knew that would just create problems between us. Figured maybe business was picking up and she was genuinely busier at work. Then I got a text message that changed everything. It was from my buddy Ryan, whom I have known since middle school. We don't hang out as much as we used to, but we still talk occasionally and grab beers when we can. The message simply said, "What the fuck is this?" with a photo attached. When I opened the picture, my stomach dropped straight to the floor. It was my wife at some club, kissing another guy. Not just a friendly peck on the cheek, but full on making out with this dude. She was wearing a dress I recognized, one she had bought a few months earlier. The timestamp on the photo indicated that it was taken the previous night when she claimed she was working late on inventory. I stared at that picture for probably 10 minutes, trying to process what I was seeing. My hands were shaking so bad I damn near couldn't hold it. I immediately forwarded the photo to my wife with a message that said, "Your shit will be packed by the time you get home." Then I called Ryan to ask him where he had taken the picture and what else he had seen. He said he was at this club with some coworkers and spotted her on the dance floor with this guy. He said they were all over each other for most of the night, dancing close, kissing, acting like a couple. Her hands were all over him, and his hands were all over her. He took the photo because he could not believe what he was seeing and wanted to make sure he had proof. My wife called me back within 5 minutes of getting my text. I could hear panic in her voice as she asked what I was talking about and demanded to know where I got that picture. I told her to get her ass home immediately and hung up. She walked through the front door exactly 20 minutes later, probably broke every speed limit getting there. I was waiting in the living room with the photo pulled up on my phone. She tried to start explaining before she even got through the door, saying it was not what it looked like and it wasn't that serious and she could explain. I cut her off and showed her the photo, asking her to explain how inventory at the furniture store involved making out with random dudes at clubs. That's when she got angry instead of apologetic. She started yelling about how I was spying on her and violating her privacy. How dare I have someone following her around, taking pictures? I told her I was not spying on anyone, that my friend just happened to see her cheating and thought I should know about it. She got right up in my face, screaming that I was being paranoid and controlling. Then she shoved me hard in the chest. I stumbled back a few steps, but I did not push her back. Just told her to get the fuck out of my house. She refused, saying this was her house too, and I could not kick her out. We stood there staring at each other for a few minutes, both of us breathing hard and furious. Finally, I just walked away because I knew if I stayed in that room, I was going to say something I would regret or worse. We did not speak for the rest of the night. She went to the guest bedroom and I stayed in our bedroom, both of us slamming doors. The next morning, she came into the bedroom while I was getting ready for work, sat down on the edge of the bed and said she wanted to talk about what happened. I told her I didn't have time because I was already running late for work. She asked if we could talk after work, and I hesitated for a long time before agreeing. That conversation after work was probably one of the most pathetic things I have ever witnessed. She had the whole thing planned out, complete with tears and a speech about how sorry she was. She started by saying she knew what she did was wrong and there was no excuse for it. But then she immediately started making excuses anyway, said she had been drinking and was not thinking clearly, that the guy had been buying her drinks all night and she got carried away, claimed it was just a stupid mistake that did not mean anything. When I asked her what the hell she was doing at a club in the first place when she was supposed to be working late, she got all defensive again. She said that sometimes she and her coworkers would go out after they finished inventory or other projects. It was normal for people to unwind after a long day at work. I told her that unwinding after work was one thing, but making out with random dudes was completely different. She kept insisting it was just the alcohol talking and that she would never do something like that sober. I asked her about the guy, how long had this been going on, and whether she was sleeping with him. She swore up and down that she had never seen him before that night and would probably never see him again. Said he was just some random guy at the club who had been hitting on her. I did not believe a word of it, but I was emotionally exhausted from all the fighting. Part of me wanted to end the marriage right there and be done with it. But another part of me kept thinking about the 10 years we had been together, all the good times we had before this mess started. Maybe she was telling the truth about it being a one-time mistake. Maybe the alcohol had made her do something completely out of character. I told her that if she wanted to save our marriage, things would have to change dramatically. No more going out to clubs or bars without me. No more staying out all hours of the night with her work friends. Complete transparency about where she was going and who she was with. She agreed to everything immediately, promising she would do whatever it took to rebuild my trust. Said she realized how much she had hurt me and how close she had come to losing everything. For about 4 months after that, things seemed to get better. She stopped going out with her coworkers entirely. She would come straight home from work every night and spend the evening with me. Started being more affectionate and attentive than she had been in a long time. Even suggested that we both start going to individual therapy to work on our issues. I was not sure I needed therapy, but I figured it could not hurt. She found a counselor who specialized in marriage and relationship problems. She started going once a week and seemed to be taking it seriously. She would come home and tell me about things they had discussed and insights she had gained. For the first time in months, I started to feel hopeful that we might be able to get past this, that maybe the cheating incident had been the wake-up call our marriage needed. Then we decided to try couples counseling together to work on our communication and trust issues. I found a different therapist who had experience with infidelity and betrayal. The first few sessions went pretty well. We discussed our expectations for the marriage and what had led to the problems we were experiencing. My wife seemed genuinely committed to the process and was willing to do the necessary work to rebuild our relationship. But then something happened during one of our sessions that made me realize this whole reconciliation might be bullshit. We were about halfway through the session, talking about rebuilding trust and moving forward. My wife explained how much better she felt about our marriage and how committed she was to making things work. Then her phone started going off. Not just 1 or 2 texts, but constantly buzzing every few minutes. The therapist finally asked her if she needed to get that, and my wife said no, it was probably work stuff. However, her phone continued to buzz throughout the rest of the session. I could see my wife becoming increasingly distracted by it. She kept glancing at it and shifting around in her chair, like she could not wait to check her messages. After we left the therapist's office, I could not stop thinking about how unusual that was. I can almost guarantee my wife's phone never went off like that during work hours. I mean, back to back, constantly. Something about the whole situation was suspicious to me, and I didn't even question her about it. That night, I decided to check the phone bill. When I pulled up our account online and looked at the call and text logs, one number immediately stood out. There were calls and texts between my wife and this number almost every single day, sometimes multiple times per day. Messages going back and forth even when I was sitting right next to her at home. I had no idea who the number belonged to, but the frequency and timing of the communications made me mad. This was not normal work communication or casual friendship texting. This looked like someone she was in constant contact with throughout the day, someone she was talking to more than she was talking to me. I sat there staring at those phone records for over an hour, trying to figure out what to do next. The more I looked at those phone records, the more obvious it became that my wife was having another affair. All those therapy sessions, all those promises about rebuilding trust, complete bullshit. She had just gotten better at hiding it. I had about $5,000 saved up in an account she was not aware of. The money I had been saving from side jobs and overtime for the past few years. Originally, I planned to use it for a vacation or maybe some home improvements, but now I had a much better use for it. I was going to hire a private investigator. It took me a few days to research different PI firms and read online reviews. Finally settled on this guy who had some great reviews and references. His rates were not cheap, but I figured 7 days of surveillance was all I could afford with my budget. Met with him at his office and explained the whole situation, showed him the phone records, and told him about the previous cheating incident. He said cases like mine usually did not take very long to crack. Cheating spouses tend to be creatures of habit, and if she was being careless enough to text constantly during therapy sessions, she was probably being careless in other ways too. I gave him recent photos of my wife, her work schedule, and all the details about her car. He said he would start surveillance immediately and provide me with daily updates. The waiting was absolutely brutal. Every time my phone rang, I thought it might be the PI with updates. My wife was acting completely normal at home, coming back from her therapy sessions and telling me how much progress she was making. Even suggested we plan a weekend getaway to celebrate how much better our marriage was doing. It made me sick to my stomach knowing she was probably texting her affair partner the whole time, but I had to play this out and keep my cool. On the third day, the PI called with news. He had hit the jackpot. My wife had met up with a guy at an upscale wine bar located on the ground floor of one of his commercial buildings. They were sitting at a high-top table in the back corner, sharing a bottle of wine and acting like they owned the place. After about an hour at the wine bar, they took the elevator up to what appeared to be his private office on the third floor, where they spent 2 hours before she returned to the furniture store. The PI had gotten photos of everything, but here was the kicker. He had also identified the guy. It turned out to be a businessman who owned multiple commercial properties around the city, real estate investments, office buildings, retail spaces, that kind of thing, and he was married with kids. When the PI told me that, I almost threw up. This was not some random hookup or drunken mistake like she had claimed before. This was a full-blown affair with someone she was seeing regularly, someone with money and status who probably made her feel special and important. The PI said he could continue surveillance for the rest of the week, but honestly, I had seen enough. I paid him for the full 7 days anyway and asked him to compile a comprehensive report, including all the photos and evidence. Now I had to decide what to do with this information. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately and throw her cheating ass out of the house, but I remembered what had happened the last time when I had acted on emotion instead of logic. This time I was going to be smart about it. I started researching divorce lawyers and Louisiana divorce law. Found out that Louisiana is technically a no-fault state, but you can still file for divorce based on fault grounds like adultery. Filing on fault grounds could potentially impact aspects such as alimony and property. Since my wife was the one cheating, I wanted to make sure she did not get to benefit financially from destroying our marriage. I hired a good lawyer who had some really good reviews. He said from the looks of it, we had a case for adultery and that we should move forward immediately. The divorce papers were filed, and my wife was served at her job at the furniture store. I was not there to see it happen, but I can only imagine how embarrassing that must have been for her. Having a process server show up at her workplace in front of all her coworkers and customers. But that was not the end of my revenge. I also had the private investigator help me track down the affair partner's wife. I found out where she worked and obtained her contact information. I called her up and explained the whole situation, told her about the photos and evidence of her husband cheating with my wife. She was completely devastated, had no idea any of this was going on, said her husband had been working late a lot more recently, but she thought it was just business, never suspected he was having an affair. I felt terrible for her because she seemed like a nice person who did not deserve to be betrayed like this. But I figured she had the right to know what her husband was doing during all those late nights at the office, sent her copies of all the photos and evidence so she could make her own decisions about her marriage. Meanwhile, my wife was blowing up my phone, trying to get me to talk to her, left probably 20 voicemails begging me to let her explain and asking how I could do this to her, like I was the one who had done something wrong. I did not answer any of her calls or respond to her texts. My lawyer had advised me not to communicate with her directly and to let him handle everything. The whole situation was finally out in the open, and there was no going back. After 10 years of marriage and months of lies and manipulation, I was finally free. Update. It's been about 9 months since I posted this story, and I wanted to give everyone an update on how things have turned out. First off, my wife completely lost her mind when she realized I had hired a private investigator and had actual proof of her affair. She started calling me at all hours of the day and night, showing up at job sites where she knew I was working, and even tried to involve my family and friends. She was desperate to convince me that we could work things out and save our marriage. Her whole pitch was that this affair meant nothing to her, and she was willing to cut off all contact with the guy. Said she would quit her job at the furniture store if that's what it took. She would go to therapy again, marriage counseling, whatever I wanted. She even offered to sign a kind of agreement, giving me access to all her accounts and passwords, complete transparency about everything she was doing. For about 2 weeks, she kept showing up everywhere, trying to ambush me into having conversations about reconciliation. I finally had to threaten to get a restraining order if she did not leave me alone. My lawyer told me not to engage with her at all and to document every time she tried to contact me. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings were moving forward. Since we were in Louisiana and I had solid evidence of her adultery, I was able to file on fault-based grounds. This turned out to be a huge advantage because adultery in Louisiana could affect alimony. My wife's lawyer attempted to argue that she deserved spousal support anyway, but the judge immediately shut that down. When you commit adultery in Louisiana, it could affect the outcome of you getting financial support from the spouse you betrayed. The house was another battle, but since I had been making most of the mortgage payments with my HVAC income and she had been spending her money on affair partners, the judge awarded it to me completely. My wife tried to fight all of this through her lawyer, claiming the settlement was unfair. But when you have photographs of someone cheating and abandoning their marriage, you are kind of at a disadvantage. The final decree was signed last month. I got the house and she was completely denied any alimony. She managed to keep her car, some of her savings account, most of her clothes and personal belongings, and a few pieces of furniture, but no monthly support payments whatsoever. She has to figure out how to support herself after blowing up her marriage for an affair. The affair partner's marriage also fell apart after his wife got the evidence I provided. The affair partner's wife told me that he lost half his commercial properties in the divorce settlement. His ex-wife hired a ruthless lawyer who went after everything he owned. Both my ex-wife and her affair partner basically destroyed their lives for a few months of sneaking around. Meanwhile, I'm sitting in the house that used to be ours and building a new life. My ex-wife is apparently still trying to contact me occasionally through social media or mutual friends, still pushing this narrative. We could have worked things out if I had just given her another chance. Some people never learn. The reconciliation picture might work on desperate guys who have no self-respect. But after 10 years of marriage and watching her lie straight to my face during therapy sessions, I was done. You only get to betray someone so many times before they write you off completely. She made her choice when she decided to start screwing around with a married man. Now she gets to live with the consequences of her choices. Commentary. Remember, people, don't stay in a relationship and let someone make a fool out of you.